was your crush when you were 13? Do you remember?
When I was 13, I think it was JTT, Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Oh,
come on.
Yeah, that's a classic. Mine was Taylor Hanson.
Ooh.
So they played Hanson at the wedding at the Vatican. Hi, I'm Katie.
And this is Nathan.
And you're listening to Queens, the podcast about badass women in history. Hey, so you have joined us for our first full Bad and Boujee episode.
Cooking shit up with an Uzi.
Ooh, I wonder how I can get Migos to let me use their song.
I could think of a few ways. I know how to get under the sheets.
You know Migos? You know them firsthand? Can I just tweet at them? Like, hey at Migos.
Give me your song.
Hashtag what are royalties? Anyway, so these are slightly shorter episodes about women that weren't queens, but
made a fucking impact.
And we're still talking about them a million years later, or 500, whatever, how many years ever this is. So, Lucrezia's Bad and Boujee, cooking up shit with an Uzi. Come on this journey with us. Thanks, bitch. I don't know what you know about me, but I'm the motherfucking P-O-P-E. I'm sorry, I've been singing that all week.
The goddamn Pope is coming up.
Pope Daddy. We are talking about Lucrezia Borgia this week in our very first episode, our Bad and Boujee episode.
She wasn't necessarily a queen, but her life was all over the place. And honestly, it was because of her Pope Daddy.
Because of her Pope Daddy. But it's still a scandal we talk about all this time later. She was probably not that bad, but she was definitely bougie. So here we go. And so today we are pairing her with a drink called Poison.
I mean, go figure. You gotta do it. You gotta do it.
That's her legacy. That's the very first thing I ever heard about Lucrezia Borgia was that she wore a hollow ring that she could keep poison in.
I mean, that's bad and bougie.
That's bad and bougie, though probably not
true.
Any kind of accurate.
No.
In this cocktail, we've got vodka, orange liqueur, lemon, and soda water.
Cheers!
Cheers to Lucrezia.
Can we call her Lucretia?
Can we call her Lucy?
Miss
Lucy. So she was born the daughter of a cardinal.
Which, I mean...
Scandalous enough.
Let that sink in.
Scandalous enough. But her father became pope, and that started a dynasty that would scandalize the Vatican for generations. Still, somewhat unfairly, she's remembered as a temptress and even possibly murderous. Was she a temptress? Was she a murderess? Or was she just a pawn in the game the men in her life played?
I think I'm opting for the last one. I think she was definitely a pawn. But she was actually born in April 18th, 1480, so she's an Aries man. She's definitely an Aries, so if you're a Gemini, then that'd be a good match. It's like sign twins. Anyway, her dad was, like we said, Cardinal Rodrigo Borgia, and her mother was his favorite mistress. So he actually had a couple different kids with the different mistresses,
I mean, she was basically his wife.
Yeah,
for
and he never claimed any of those children anyway. But her name was Vanozza de Catania. I said that as eloquently as possible.
Good. I would have been like Vanozza Catani.
But she had blonde hair and blue eyes.
She was supposedly very beautiful.
Yeah, she was very beautiful. But let's kind of look at the political climate at this time in Italy. And that kind of explains why the Borgia family
has the stigma.
Exactly.
Has this stigma.
So Italy's
them. And also because they were murderous assholes.
But they totally were. But Italy was just broken up into these gerrymandered, crazy provinces, city-states.
It's not like what you think of Italy now.
It's not the boot. It's definitely not the entire boot. It's like half the boot.
It's fragmented boots.
But there was just powerful families all over Italy, and the Borgias just kind of
just feuding over land.
Rolled on in from Spain and started to take some of the power.
We need another fucking powerful family coming in on our territory.
Of course, and the Italians were like, what the hell are these people doing here?
So they were unpopular from the get-go. So I think that, along with some other things, really started the scandal and the negativity.
The rumors.
That's
where it really
Also,
starts.
let's just go ahead and say the Vatican, Rome at this time, it was some mean girl shit, the way that they gossiped on each other.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, there's rumors of cardinals killing the Pope.
Yeah.
Which is Pope Daddy. That's a
Pope
rumor.
Daddy.
Just a rumor.
Her family. She had a number of half-brothers and half-sisters, but she definitely had 3 full brothers, Juan, Cesare, and Geoffrey. And so the Pope Daddy eventually put their mother aside, but they remained friendly, and she lived a cush life.
Yeah, he had a lot of money.
Yeah, they put her up in like some mansions, gave her like a husband.
She's the number one.
She is the main bitch. And these were the only children that Pope Daddy recognized. He had other kids and I think he did provide for them too. But these were the only 4 that he was like, those are my babies. And so she was raised just in lap of luxury. And then she was educated very well.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a theme with almost all the women we talk about.
Theme. And I think,
they're
honestly,
smart and they're educated well.
The more I read about it, the more they were just taught to read different languages and speak different languages. But I think that's because the dads wanted to marry them off to somebody.
I might marry to somebody in France, so you better be
you gotta learn French.
She's super smart, great education. And so when she was 12, her dad becomes Pope Alexander VI. Back then, popes and cardinals lived a life of celibacy, and I'm using air quotes.
Air quotes.
Which basically meant they didn't get married, but they were powerful fucking men with lots of money. I don't know if you know this, if you've watched the news before. Powerful men with lots of money, fuck.
The true story.
True story.
They make stupid decisions too.
And they didn't have birth control back then, really, so they had babies. It was really common, but it was not common for popes and cardinals to recognize their children.
To recognize it. So they
like
had
Pope
them.
Daddy did.
Yeah, they had them, but Mr. Pope Alexander VI was like, yeah, that's my baby.
These are my kids. What? And everyone was like, okay, yeah. He's like, okay, now I'm the Pope. I have this beautiful daughter. It's time to marry her into some power.
So she was actually previously engaged to 2 other Spanish noblemen,
yeah,
and I so badly want to feel like she loved one of them, but
also she was 12 or 13 and you love every boy that tells you you're pretty.
Exactly. But her dad arranged this weird ass marriage with Giovanni Sforza, who's 27 and she's 13.
Oh, because history is disgusting.
Gross. More than twice her age, twice her age plus 1. And
the reason that alliance was important is, okay, so the King of France was like, Naples looks good, and just tried to take over Naples. And that's going to be a recurring theme because Pope Daddy always wanted to be cool with the King of France.
The P-O-P-E.
Motherfucking P-O-P-E was like, I gotta get in with France. France is where it was.
I think it was the artillery, the weaponry.
They were just
he
powerful.
Just wanted power.
He wanted to be in with France. And the Sforza family was from the north of Italy, and they were in alliance at the time with France. So he was like, that's where we gotta be. Let's marry her to somebody in the Sforza family.
And the Sforzas are powerful.
The Sforzas were fucking ruthless.
Yeah.
One day we got to do a Bad and Bougie about Katerina Sforza.
Oh, God. She grabbed herself by the pussy.
Oh, she did grab herself by the pussy. Well, you know what? We'll keep you in suspense there. That's fine. Unless you have the internet. You can just look it up yourself.
But anyway.
They're marrying her off to Giovanni Sforza. It definitely wasn't a love match.
No, definitely not.
Because she was 13. He was 27.
Gross.
Who was your crush when you were 13? Do you remember?
When I was 13, I think it was JTT, Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Oh,
come on.
Yeah, that's a classic. Mine was Taylor Hanson.
Ooh.
Anyway, so they played Hanson at the wedding at the Vatican between Lucrezia Borgia.
And it was a fabulous wedding.
But no, so they had this huge wedding at the Vatican, which was unprecedented at the time.
Yeah, that shit doesn't happen.
Pope's daughters weren't getting married. Could you imagine getting given away by the Pope?
Right? In the Vatican.
In the Vatican.
That's my dad, and he's the Pope.
Is there anything more bad or bougie than having your wedding at the Vatican and being given away by your Pope Daddy?
The quick answer, hell no.
No. Answer is no. She's 13. So this is gross, but this is how life was then. The official age, or like the accepted age of consent, was 14. So she was married then, and it was agreed that she would live for the first year of their marriage, stay at the Vatican, and then she'd go off with Giovanni wherever he lived, which I think was like in the sticks somewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, he's a sports guy.
So she was underwhelmed at like their country estate or whatever. So political tides change.
Yeah.
They've been married for 3 years. Things change.
Naples ends up like making a peace treaty. Nobody really, and at that point, the Pope was like, we really don't need you anymore,
like,
Giovanni.
I could have my beautiful daughter married to somebody much more powerful at this point.
And I could make an alliance with somebody else to make the Vatican the center of the world.
Make the Vatican great again.
Yes.
It's going to be huge.
It's going to be huge.
I don't have a good POTUS impression. Best Vatican. Everybody says so. We have the best cardinals.
They are the best, the worst.
Tremendous.
Anyway. After 3 years, they were like, we don't need them anymore. And so they wanted to make friends in the South. And
they hadn't had children together yet.
Yeah.
Which was huge. If they had, they couldn't so easily have removed him from the
And that's
situation.
the whole thing, is like the whole annulment was based on the fact that
they had never consummated their marriage. No
consummation of marriage.
But, like,
they didn't have sex.
They had like most definitely consummated their marriage.
I'm 100% sure, but at the same point, there was no proof.
There was no proof. First they were like, all right, Giovanni, we don't really want you anymore. We need you to divorce Lucrezia. And he was like, I'm not divorcing my wife. This is ridiculous. The Borgias are ruthless. And so Cesare starts to plan like, cool, we'll just off him. It'll be fine. Lucrezia had the kindness to tell her husband, who I don't think they necessarily had like a happy marriage.
No.
I don't think it's like in the show where he was abusive.
Like abusive? I don't think it was that bad.
But I think she was sort of like,
Yeah, and by the show we mean like the Showtime Borgias.
The Showtime Borgias. We both love this show. Not the Netflix one.
Because he has an American accent. The Pope has an American accent. It's weird.
It makes no sense that they have British accents in the Showtime
No, it doesn't
one.
either. But I mean, I feel like if you're speaking Italian, it's like fancy. So you gotta have a British accent? I don't know. I'm trying.
I only watched one. I didn't even watch a full episode of the Netflix one.
Pulling out some strings here.
We have gotten off topic. So anyway, she's like, look, I've got wind that like Cesare is probably going to have you killed.
My brother's about to off your ass.
I don't know if you know about my family.
Run the fuck away.
He was like, fine, I'll give her the annulment. And they made him sign documents that said that he was impotent.
That's humiliating.
Oh, like
what the hell?
Back then, like, he was never going to be able... No one would ever want to marry him.
And he had illegitimate children, so we know that he wasn't
illegitimate
impotent.
children, and he went on to have another kid later in his life when he finally did find somebody to marry him again. But still...
He could get it up.
Is like what the description of this episode is going to be in iTunes now. Lucrezia Borgia. He could get it up. So he agreed to say that he never slept with his wife. But while this was all going on, he said to somebody, I've slept with my wife 100 times, but I have to pretend like I didn't because the Pope wants her for himself.
Ooh, and they took that and ran with it.
Well, so when I first heard that quote, I thought it just meant like the Pope wants her for herself, wants her for himself for like political reasons, to remarry her. But the people of Rome took it as the Pope wants to bone his daughter.
Yeah, and they ran with that rumor.
I mean, it's
That's
still,
where the incest
besides
came
the
from.
poison thing, the other thing that everyone thinks of when they think of Lucrezia Borgia is, oh, she fucked her brother. And so they ran with it, and Giovanni just was like, yeah, that's totally what I meant. Absolutely. And then somebody added on, oh, and she's also sleeping with her brother Cesare. And it just snowballed from there. And everybody took to it. And that's, like, what stuck with her.
Yeah, and so, like, apparently during this first marriage, like, towards the end of the first marriage with Giovanni, she actually, there was these rumors, and I fact there were lots of rumors starting, and they thought that she had this illegitimate baby with it. So let me, like, break it down. Like, so with Giovanni, she's married to Giovanni, and they're about to get an annulment. She's apparently sleeping with Pittoro, which we're just going to call Pedro.
Because it's easier.
So much easier. And so she sleeps with him, and then all of a sudden in June...
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Again, air quotes.
Allegedly.
So on June, they send her to a convent. Well, her dad does, Pope Daddy. Pope Daddy. Alexander VI. Let's be for real. But he sends her to a convent, and then in December... Actually, the annulled marriage goes through, everything's signed through, because it's kind of convenient to have a pope as a father who can annul your marriage.
Yeah, because back then, you could only get an annulment based on non-consummation.
Yep.
And so she was like, I got to get out of this marriage. It has to be sanctioned by the pope. Hey, I know a guy.
And that's exactly what happened. And so anyway, he annulled the marriage on December. And then in February, Pedro, the guy that she slept with, that she kind of had, there were rumors that there was an affair there. And
a little piece of fun on the side.
He ends up dead in the Tiber River.
And the story is that Cesare, her brother, had him... murdered
because there were a lot of
a lot of Borgia enemies ended up in the Tiber River.
Yeah, it's kind of hello. They may have done it, and then like literally in February he was found dead in the river, and then in March there was an ambassador comes and says that Lucrezia apparently gave birth at that time, but there's not really any documents on that.
So what there was definitely a baby born around this time, and I didn't write down what they called it. It was something like baby of the Vatican, the papal baby, the papal infant, the Vatican infant, something. There was a baby and there was the Pope involved, and
they sent out like two papal
bulls. They sent out two papal bulls, which are not bulls wearing Pope hats.
No, it's like a press release.
It's like a Pope press release. So his PR team sent out one papal bull, being like, hey, there's this baby, and it's Cesare's.
And then the other papal bull was like, hey, there's this baby, and it's Pope Daddy's.
And it's Pope Daddy's. And so everyone was just like, you ain't fooling anybody. This is Lucrezia's baby.
Yeah.
And so we really don't know. His name was Giovanni Borgia. We really, in the end of the day, nobody for sure knows who was the mom, who was the dad.
Nobody.
But I will say this. Throughout his life, he kept ending up in Lucrezia's care. And they were close, and there are correspondence between the two of them, like letters, and they had a close relationship.
And apparently whenever he died, because he died before her, apparently she went and like liquidated all of his assets.
Which really wouldn't be that weird if you're the aunt and you were close.
Family.
But I just think they were a little closer than you would necessarily say an aunt and niece.
Yeah, agreed.
But who knows? Anyway, allegedly. So this seems like a good place to take a quick break.
And give a quick plug to the podcast.
Yeah, so we're going to top off our drinks, but while we're doing that, why don't you check out Queens_podcast on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook at Queens Podcast. When you search us on iTunes, you got to smush the words together. Queens Podcast.
Yeah.
No spaces.
Just one word.
Queens Podcast.
One word.
So we're going to top off our drinks. We'll be back in a second to talk about Lucrezia's second marriage. All right. So a little time passes.
A few years pass.
A little time. And they're like, all right, we need to marry you off again. We need another alliance. And now we want to be tied with Naples.
So he marries her off to Alfonso of Aragon. Alfie, part 1.
So, I really think Alfie and Lucy were in love.
I totally do, too. I think they were enamored with each other.
They were both hot. He was actually her own age, not way older. And they were both, by contemporary sources, said to be super attractive. And it just really seemed like they loved each other.
Yeah, I totally think they did. They did.
The marriage contract stipulated that they would live in Rome until Pope Daddy died.
How convenient for Pope Daddy.
I know. So they were happy. They really loved each other. Unfortunately, Lucrezia did suffer a miscarriage. But then she got pregnant pretty quickly again after. Then, just like with Giovanni, the political tides start to change.
Pope Daddy doesn't need as much power in that area anymore.
He's like, well, Alfonso, this family, Naples, isn't really serving us anymore. And Alfie gets wind of it, and he tries to take off. Because it's not like they can say they never consummated the marriage with this one, because...
There's a baby.
She pregnant.
I can't lie about that one.
And so he takes off. She begs him to come back. She's like, you can't just leave me here. Please come back. Me and your son are here because they had a baby.
And that's why I think that she loved him, too.
No, I think she just loved him. She was like, no, I promise nothing's going to happen. Because her brother and father, they adored her. They were always super affectionate with her, which fed the incest rumors. But I think she really thought, no, they want what's best for me. They would never hurt you. And she was sorely mistaken.
Yeah.
Because he comes back, and on July 15th, 1500, he is attacked on the stairs in front of, like, some cathedral there.
He was straight up, like, shanked.
I mean, he was stabbed and just attacked and brutally just...
And I think they after the attack, they, like, sent him to the Borgia Tower to get cared for by a bunch of nurses and stuff and doctors.
And Lucrezia and his sister were, like, the main people caring for them, and they brought in all the best doctors and all the best nurses, and he was actually on the mend. He survived.
But. And it's a big but.
Someone comes in the night while everyone's sleeping and strangles him to death. And I really do think it was, if not Cesare, one of his henchmen.
They were in the Borgia Tower, so of course they knew the ins and outs of that place.
So the jury is out on if Pope Daddy really had anything to do with this, because he had sent guards, and maybe that was just a front. Maybe that was just a make it look like...
Yeah, make it look like it wasn't him.
Or maybe it was all 100%
Cesare,
because he was like, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. Either way, Lucrezia was devastated.
Yeah, I mean, her man that she loved so much just got strangled or, like, smothered.
For months. He had a brutal end, and she, like, mourned him for months. And I really think that neither her brother or Pope Daddy expected this, because they both loved her, but they just always had what was best for the family in mind. And so they thought, I'm doing what's best for the family. They did not take her emotions into account.
And that's what totally was a changing point in her life.
It was a huge changing point in her life. They sent her away because she was so depressing. She was signing all her letters, the saddest princess in all Christendom or something like that. And they were just like, oh, bitch, you are bringing us down.
Too much drama.
Get out of here.
So they just pushed her on out.
And I really think that was the point where she realized, she always thought that, okay, yeah, we're doing stuff for the family, but that means the good for each other. And now she's like, no, they don't care about my feelings.
No, and they don't. And that's exactly the point.
And as long as I'm here in Rome, my life is always going to be scandalous. My life is always going to be full of drama. And so she was like, I gotta get out of here.
And at the same point, her dad, like, totally set up another marriage after, like, the death of her, like, beloved second marriage. And this is Alfie Part 2.
Alfie 2.
Alfonso de Este, Duke of Ferrara. I had to say it. I had to say it all fancy like that.
Alfie Part 2.
So she, like, totally just runs off to Ferrara with this dude, which is honestly probably really good for her because she needs to be away from it.
I think strategically, because I feel like she could have contested this marriage, because he contested this marriage tooth and nail. He wanted nothing to do with the scandal of the Borgia family. And I felt if she didn't want to be in this marriage too, she could have. But she was like, no, I've got to get away from Rome. I've got to separate myself from my crooked family. And so she saw this marriage as a way to do it. So she like leaned in, you know. He was like, no part of this. And then the Borgias were like, but money. And so he was like,
okay, maybe so. And apparently, like,
Pope better have my money.
Pope better have my money.
Anyway.
But he set up this other marriage with him, and at first it was not meant to be, but eventually they did grow to, like, be close to each other.
I don't know if I would say, by the end of it, because they were married for nearly 20 years.
They had 8 babies, yo.
Yeah, they definitely loved each other, but it was never, like, romance love.
No, I don't think it was like the second husband type
It was
of
like a partnership, because she actually became a really great duchess. The people of Ferrara loved her, and she actually found, like... Funny, she escaped Rome and her father, the Pope, and found religion. And she became very religious and pious and did work for the poor, and the people loved her. She was an amazing duchess. Were her and her husband faithful to each other?
Absolutely not.
In no way, shape, or form.
I kind of honestly think that in the 1500 terms, they probably had an open marriage.
Open marriage!
Because, like, she slept with her brother-in-law, Francesco Gonzaga, and that was just really just a sexual thing. And then he caught syphilis, and they were like...
And she was like, oh, it's not me, it's you.
Not in my vajayjay.
I don't want syphilis.
Bye, Felicia.
He was actually bisexual.
Oh, well, that sounds like my kind of man.
Oh.
Anyway, so there was that one. That was her brother-in-law, and that was just sexual. But then there's these letters between a poet.
What was his name?
Pietro Bembo, which I think...
We're also going to call him Pedro.
Pedro part 2. I mean, there's lots of, like, they don't have to confuse names. But anyway, like, they wrote all of these letters to each other, and it was supposedly so romantic.
And that went on for a really long time.
Yeah, even Lord Byron was like... That shit's hot.
Yeah. No, yeah. So in their collection of letters, one of the things that was preserved was like a lock of her hair, which, okay. And Lord Byron stole some of it because he is
creepy
motherfucker.
That's fucking weird.
That is weird. Anyway.
And apparently there was like a third person that there was no documents from her end saying that she returned his favor, but he was so enamored with her, he just like talked about how wonderful she was.
Kind of
he was a French soldier, just like, oh, I love her, but hey, who knows? It's all rumors. Yeah. Anyway, an ironic thing about them was they weren't particularly faithful to each other.
But they became like religious figures, not religious figures, but like known for their devotion to the church. And she even served as de facto ruler whenever Alfie II went off to fight in war, which we'll talk about quite a bit with queens and stuff. Whenever their men go off to storm the castle, they're left to be rulers.
They're in power. So,
and I cannot get past enough. It's just so weird to me to think she was 20 before she married him, and all this scandal. And then she moves here, removes herself from the stigma of Rome, and just becomes like this pillar of the community.
Yeah.
So they live together like 18 to 20 years. They have 8 pregnancies. I think it only results in 4 children that make it to adulthood.
Yeah, and her final kid that she had was in 1519. And it was really rough on her.
Yeah. Like all her pregnancies have been rough. She was not good at having babies.
She had miscarriages. She had problems. Babies died at birth. Babies died after birth.
Which was normal.
Common,
back then.
but at the same point,
then she was just like, I would like to be a Renaissance cliche, and I'm going to die on childbirth.
And that's exactly what she did. Her body gave the fuck up and was like, I'm sorry, can't do it anymore.
Supposedly, though, Alfie too mourned the hell out of her.
And honestly, I mean,
it was his business partner. It was his friend.
I honestly think that, like, after the death of her dad, which was in, like, 1500, after the death of her dad, she honestly was able to be herself. And so, like, she lived this pious life and was able to give to the community. And she didn't have somebody saying, oh, you're going to have to marry this guy next.
You have to do this now. You might murder this person. She was able to run off and just separate herself.
And that's honestly speaks to her legacy.
Yeah.
Like, that speaks to her legacy, which is, like, she was a pawn.
But I wish that was her legacy of being this great duchess that the people loved and that really cared for the community and made sacrifices. It's not. Her legacy is that she was incestuous and that she poisoned people. And that's because that makes a lot better Showtime
drama.
TV
Yeah,
than the real story. The story about the hollow ring, not true. Her legacy of fucking her brother, not true.
It was all based on the fact that her dad was making a series of fucking power plays, and she had no fucking power.
She was a pawn, absolutely. But in the end,
she persisted.
Nevertheless,
she persisted. Bad and bougie.
And we're still talking about her now, like 600 years later. So
she made a name for herself.
So that was our first Bad and Bougie episode.
I hoped you liked Lucrezia Borgia. That wasn't really her last name.
Lucrezia.
Lucrezia.
I like Lucrezia. It's me. I'm at a pope. I'm sorry, I had to do it. It's me. I'm at a pope. So,
really glad y'all took a listen to this Bad and Bougie segment.
That y'all came on this journey with us. So we are still debating our next episode. I threw up a poll on both Twitter and Facebook. On Facebook, Catherine of Aragon won outstandingly, and on Twitter, Catherine de Medici won outstandingly.
So it's going to be a Catherine one way.
So it's going to be a Catherine. I know neither of them were regnants, but they were both definitely badass bitches that came to slay and got shit done. And that's what matters. This will probably go up tomorrow, tomorrow's the 26th, March 26th, Sunday. Write us. Email us.
Let us know who you want to hear about.
Let us know who you want to hear.
Be the tiebreaker.
And if we haven't made a decision yet, maybe you'll sway us. So that'll probably be in another couple of weeks. So, yeah. Thanks for listening.
Queen's Podcast, bitch.
Slay, bitch.
Yes, queen.
Yeah.